My name is Zachariah Henry Moss, and this is my lovely wife, Emma. My father, Zachariah Lewis Moss, had his shop on Pearl Street between 2nd and 3rd. I learned about barbering there. This is where we live. Barbers were tonsurless. Now, tonsure means to cut or shave. In the really old days, we would do minor surgery and dental work. That is why the barber pole is painted with a red and white stripe in a diagonal pattern.
LaCrosse was a city built on trade and transportation. Railroads and riverboats brought men into our barbershop. Fashion and necessity brought most of the men every other day for a shave and at least once a month for a haircut. But you lost money on some.
More than some, hundreds of men came and went. 3/4 of them did not want a haircut or a shave for at least 3 months. Lumberjacks and longshoremen were not a group to recruit for haircuts or shaves.
Let's not get too hard on the rivermen. Your father's wealth began with his work on the river.
You're right. A man can't forget where he came from. My father came up the Mississippi River working on packet boats. He was a barber and born a free man in Wheeling, Virginia in 1824.
Thousands of free people of color moved west from Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia after Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831. The black codes had been restrictive prior to the rebellion, but after the rebellion, southern states threatened to arrest and sell free people of color into slavery if they remained in the state.
Then, in 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was signed. Some northern states began writing black codes making even more restrictions, and free people of color were forced out of Ohio and Indiana. I know Emma's family was part of this mass movement from the East Coast, and my family was also.
My sister Ellen was married to Ashley Shivers. They eventually settled in LaCrosse also. Our family, the Waldens, came to Wisconsin from Indiana and settled in Cheyenne Valley, just outside of Hillsborough in Vernon County. I was born there in 1862. Ellen and I came from a large family. Our mother always said it was in the water. Anyway, after spending some time in Barber as a teacher, I met Zachariah. We moved back to LaCrosse and married in 1897, a few years before Zach's father died in 1902.
I was born right here in LaCrosse in 1866. Our families knew each other from Cheyenne Valley. My shop was much like my father's. It had 3 chairs. I hired a porter, a bootblack, and 2 barbers. And I offered an apprenticeship to 2 young men a year at least. Each year, many young men moved through the apprenticeship programs offered by John Burney, my brother-in-law, Ashley Shivers, and me.
I was especially proud of their work teaching apprentices to read, write, and prepare for business. I was also particularly proud of what the newspaper said about Zachariah. Go into the new Moss & Son barbershop and see the old hands at work. Take down your old razor to get ground. Get shaved while it is ground. And you'll be sure to leave it there. You'll forget all about your razor. Service. That's what kept Zach in the newspapers.
Oh, and we got a newspaper for other things too, such as the boxing ring in back of the shop.
Zach, how did you get any work done with all that talk about boxing?
You know, my father and I built our business from the men on the railroad and riverboats. These men love boxing. And Dad and I love boxing. We were great barbers and great bare-knuckle boxers. The busy part of the day started with the train arriving at 8:15 a.m. on the dot. We always had our usual customers, but when the trains pulled in, the men knew where to come, to either Moss & Sons Barbershop or Ashley Shivers Barbershop.
LaCrosse didn't have a union station in the early years. In fact, all the trains had to back in or back out of the city because each railroad company had its own stations along 2nd and 3rd Streets between State and Pearl, where Zach's shops were.
Later, the train station moved to St. Andrews and Rose Streets, and we moved our shop to Northside on Mill Street. I think you call it Copeland Avenue now. Anyway, railroad men were glad to see our shop at the end of their trip. Our Turkish bath and a good shave would be the first thing the customers wanted. I was a good boxer, I always won.
I guess I would be more disturbed by the roughness of it all. But Zach did use the ring to teach the young men how to box. He taught them the value of decency and fair play, and he also cautioned them against unnecessary fights and how to stay out of trouble.
Emma did her fair share in the community as well. She was involved with community circles at the Methodist Church. We also opened up our home to people who needed a place to stay. Crosse didn't exactly have established black codes by law, but people of color knew when they weren't welcome at restaurants and boarding houses. The Moss and the Shivers families always opened up their homes to apprentices and travelers.
Zach made a good living in his barber shop. We had a very prominent home, and because of that, it was possible for us to be active in our community.
It was easy to do when you offered them a free newspaper and breakfast every morning.
You made up for it with profits and tips. Zach, you know you only charge 5 cents for a haircut?
Hi, my name is Corey Zach Moss, and this is the story of my great-grandparents. My ancestors, the Moss family, lived their entire lives in La Crosse, Wisconsin. They had 3 children. 2 lived to be adults. June was born in 1900. She became a teacher in Cairo, Illinois. Orbis, my grandfather, was born in 1902, and he took up the family tradition of becoming a successful barber in his own right. Joanna was born in 1904. Sadly, she passed away while she was still a child. Emma died in 1935 at the age of 69. Zacharias died in 1938 at the age of 76. They were buried in Revel Cemetery in Dilley, Vernon County, near Joanna, and many of their extended family from Cheyenne Valley.